Well, good morning. Coming to you a little bit later today from my secret lair. Actually, this is where I do a lot of my preparation for Facebook Live for my Sunday sermon. So, anyway, you are being brought into the inner sanctum today. Anyway, topic for today: if you are too much younger than me, you won't know who Joe Friday is. Maybe I should say was. But there was an old TV show called Dragnet. Not sure I ever even saw it. It went off the air before I was born. I might have seen it in reruns or something. But there was a guy on there named Sergeant Joe Friday. I think he was the star of the show. And he would always say, "Just the facts, man," when he was trying to investigate whatever crime was going on. So a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up if you know who or you saw Joe Friday. And then if you don't know who Joe Friday is, just comment "No Joe" in the box. That'll be fine. Anyway, today's devotional is a news story from the New York Times. I'm going to call it "Just the Bad News, Ma'am." Whereas Joe Friday said "Just the Facts," I want to give us a story about what the New York Times is, an article from the New York Times about bad news. Anyway, welcome. Good morning. I'm Pastor Jeff Elliott, New Horizons Fellowship. I'm not at the church right now. I do want to say thank you to those of you who watch regularly. I go back once in a while to see who's out there, and some of you have not seen or talked to in a long time, so I do appreciate you watching. A couple jokes for the day. As a child, I was made to walk the plank. We couldn't afford a dog. See, good stuff. A couple of them about kids today that just made me laugh. I remember when I was a kid, you could go to the store with $1, come home with 3 bags of chips, 2 candy bars, and a cold drink. Now they have cameras everywhere. Just kidding. I never stole anything from a store. Anyway, instead of a joke well, it is kind of a joke, but instead of giving you a joke for the third thing today, I want to read you a real news story from my hometown. So if there's any of my Connorsville people out there, give me a thumbs up. Let me know you're out there. But this is a mystery that we need Joe Friday to help us solve. And I want to read. This is the true story from the Connorsville News Examiner. I think I'm going to take out the names, just because there might be some Connorsville people watching. Anyway, early Friday morning, a Connorsville police officer was conducting a building check at FCN Bank. I'm not sure what that is anymore, when he heard a man crying for help. After hearing the man, the police officer radioed in assistance from other police department officers. While walking in the alley near Community Corrections, 2 deputies assisted this police officer as they searched for the subject. The man continued to yell for help, his voice coming from behind FCN Bank along 2nd Street. After hearing a third cry, the officers were led back to 3rd Street, where the original police officer heard the voice calling from under his feet. The police officer then spoke to this man's name through a storm drain, 35-year-old man. The police officer said, "I couldn't see him, but he advised me that he was stuck in the drainage system and had been for 3 days." The police officer then contacted the Fayette County EMS and the fire department for assistance. The man who was in the drainage system was extracted after removing a manhole cover from the middle of the road. The article says he was unsteady on his feet and shaking violently. He was taken to the hospital. While there, he told officers he had entered the drainage pipe at the river near 3rd Street. I think I know where that is. He wasn't sure how long he had been stuck, but believed it to be at least 3 days. Okay? He stated that he entered the pipe to run from his probation officer. They contacted his probation officer, and the probation officer said that he had tried to reach the man on Monday only to verify his address. The man who was found in the drainage pipe, this is the last sentence of the article, and probably tells more than anything. The man admitted to using methamphetamine, but denied being under the influence when he entered the drainage system for 3 days. So to me, the story is a complete mystery until we get to the last line. So stay off meth, kids. Anyway, from my hometown. So let's get a little transition there. A mystery that's worthy of all of us. I mentioned on Tuesday that we have a love for scandal. I think it was last Tuesday, scandal and controversy. And fortunately, with our media outlets and our news coverage, there's always plenty to go around. I've quit watching the news again just because it's always something bad. So this is what I want to start with today was an article from the New York Times back on March 24th called Bad News Bias. And you know I've hit on this theme a couple times before, so I wanted to share this with us today. There was an economics professor at Dartmouth College who noticed something last year. This is directly from the article. I'm going to take the names out on this too. About the COVID-19 television coverage that he was watching on CNN and PBS. It almost always seemed negative, regardless of what he was seeing in the data or hearing from scientists that he knew. When COVID cases were rising in the U.S., the news coverage emphasized the increase. When cases were falling, the coverage instead focused on those places where cases were rising. And when vaccine research began showing positive results, the coverage downplayed it as far as this professor could tell. So he did a study. The results showed that his instinct had been right, and not just because the pandemic has been mostly a grim story. That was a direct quote. The study showed that about 87% of COVID coverage in the national U.S. media last year was negative. And he's emphasizing now that it was mostly, this is a U.S. phenomenon, because the share was 51% in international media versus 87% in the United States. It was 53% in U.S. regional or local media and 64% in scientific journals. So let me give you those numbers again. Nationally, the negative coverage was 87%. Internationally, 51%, dropped by more than 30%. In local media, 53%, and then in the scientific journals, only 64%. So notably, the study showed that the coverage was negative in both U.S. media outlets with liberal audiences and those with conservative audiences. So those on the extremes were the ones who emphasized the negative news more, because it's always terrible, isn't it? The article summarized it this way. If we're constantly telling a negative story, we're not giving our audience the most accurate portrait of reality. We are shading it. The researchers, this is from the article, say they are not sure what explains their findings, but they do have a leading contender. The U.S. media is giving the audience what it wants. And we can't just blame the media, though. When the researchers examined which stories were the most read or the most shared on Facebook, they tended to be the most negative stories. And isn't that the truth? I'm going to have to go on a social media fast, I think, or just block people that are so negative and extreme. To put it another way, back to the article, the stories that people choose to read skew even more negative than the stories that media organizations choose to publish. Human beings, this is a quote, particularly consumers of major media like negativity in their stories. The professor said, "We think the major media are responding to consumer demand." And I told you I've quit watching the news because it's just overwhelmingly negative. There really is some good things out there to be encouraged about. So I wanted to end with a couple verses today. I know I've probably used these before, but Philippians 4:8 says this. So this should be a reminder to those of us who are overwhelmed by bad news media and realize that we have this constant desire for it. Philippians 4:8 says this. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. So I looked up the word think there. What does it originally mean? It's just, I don't know if I go so far as to meditate, but to ponder these things, to focus on those things, to be more intent on following those things. But let's admit that when we read Philippians 4:8, it takes some real effort in today's world. Knowing what the desires of our heart are and what the media feeds us, we need to be even more cautious about our intake. My wife and I were remarking yesterday about noticing more and more lately how angry and contentious people are. It's not even election year, people, and it seems that the more extreme views just get more and more published out there. We have entered this vicious cycle. So I would challenge you today to break the cycle. Be a light in a dark place. Encourage someone. Give someone a smile. The weather's warming up outside where we are here in Indiana, and the neighbors are out walking the dogs, taking the kids on a bike ride. If nothing else, just smile, wave, say hello. If you get a chance, introduce yourself, say something. Hey, it's good to see you, neighbor. When you're at work or at school, say something positive to someone who needs to hear it. There's enough negative news in our world that we get focused on and highlighted. Enough of the bad news. So I want to close today with a passage from the Message, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 4 to 11. I'm just going to read it and then I'll pray. But friends, you're not in the dark, so how could you be taken off guard by any of this? You're sons of light, daughters of day. We live under wide open skies and know where we stand. So let's not sleepwalk through life like those others. Let's keep our eyes open and be smart. People sleep at night and get drunk at night, but not us. Since we're creatures of day, let's act like it. Walk out into the daylight sober, dressed up in faith, love, and the hope of salvation. God didn't set us up for an angry rejection, but for salvation by our Master Jesus Christ. He died for us, a death that triggered life. Whether we're awake with the living or asleep with the dead, we're alive with Him. So speak encouraging words to one another. Build up hope so you'll all be together in this. No one left out, no one left behind. I know you're already doing this. Just keep on doing it. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the opportunity today again to spend some time in your word this morning, to be challenged about our intake, to realize the own biases that we have, to hear the latest scandal and controversy and things that are going on in the world. We realize that we live in a dark place, but we are children of the light, as your word says. Give us hope today as we enter this into a new day, to come out into the light, to be people of encouragement, to be able to help those around us, to bring them some hope. And we ask this not just for today, but for every day. And may it ultimately bring people into your kingdom. May they begin to follow you and be your disciples. And may you be given honor and glory because of it. In Christ's name, amen. Hey, again, thanks for being here. As always, let me know. Put a comment or a thumbs or something. Let me know that. And we will have Sunday's recorded message up probably this Sunday or Monday. So, again, thanks for being here. Have a great week.